Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. Qin Mu and Long Jianan walked forward. What connected the sixth dragon's vein and the main dragon's vein was actually a huge gate. On its two sides, there were numerous dragon-shaped reliefs. They looked vivid and lifelike, interesting and appealing, like true dragons. Not only were they in all kinds of shapes and denoting different breeds, they were also no inferior to 100 Dragons portrait. Great Thunderclap Monastery's treasure only had 100 types of heavenly dragons, but there were as many as 1,000 types here. Dragon-shaped reliefs of all sizes surrounded a huge dragon that was coiling and raising its head upwards, looking straight at the people outside the wall. Some of the dragons were dancing in the air, some were crawling on the ground, and there were some which were sprawled on the floor hibernating. There were also some dragon-shaped reliefs that were staring at the ground as though there was something interesting below. There were also big dragons looking at small dragons playing around, some of which had even climbed onto the whiskers of the huge dragon. They were hanging down and frolicking in all kinds of poses. The huge dragon was sculpted to be formidable and terrifying. It possessed the air of a divine dragon, yet it also had a wild and savage side to it. Its gaze stared directly at the people that had come to the place, making it hard for anyone to look back at him. This huge dragon is the true Dragon Lord? If I could comprehend it, my comprehension to Thunderclap 8 strikes might just reach their extreme point, and I could probably even create new divine arts. Qin Mu's heart was greatly moved. Old Ma was skilled in sculpting, Deaf was skilled in painting, and Mute was skilled in smithing, so they had taught Qin Mu numerous things. He could admire the beauty of the reliefs of the 1,000 dragons, but he could see much more than just that. The reliefs of the gate and the others had been sculpted with a hatchet. Qin Mu could almost see a god wielding a huge hatchet and moving its heavy frame as though it was as light as the wind. The unwieldy tool became the finest brush, both coarse and wild, letting the god scrawl freely and willfully. This resulted in a set of world-shaking hatchet skills that the god could use to his heart's content. Strange, strange. Dragon-rearing Sovereign's voice came from the other side of the gate, sounding very anxious. It seemed that he had encountered something he didn't understand. Qin Mu walked through the tall gate and was slightly stunned. Below his feet was an empty abyss, while in the surroundings was thick magma running down the four walls while giving off world-shaking rumbles. They were in a straight and circular hole. It was so perfect that it seemed like it had been sliced out. But there was no main dragon's vein that dragon-rearing Sovereign had expected. He lifted the golden cauldron and flew to the center of the abyss. He examined the true Dragon Lord inside his treasure while looking around at the same time, the perplexed look on his face growing stronger and stronger. That's not right, the dragon's vein of the true dragon should be right here, so why is it gone? Could it have been moved away by someone? Or has it already transformed into a true dragon and flown away? Dragon-rearing Sovereign was fretful and uneasy. He immediately descended at a rapid speed, going towards the bottom of the huge hole. Qin Mu immediately rose into the sky and jumped onto the dragon Chilene's back. Fatty Dragon flew down while stepping on auspicious clouds. Long Jianan also flew up, then descended downward. After some time, they finally came to the bottom of the huge cavern. The two of them trembled as they looked at their surroundings in a daze. They saw lava flowing down on the walls of the cavern, washing down on the brilliant gold underground space. They were in an extremely vast space. Magma poured down from above and pounded against the ground, which was made of metal. The whole surroundings were densely packed with black gold essence, some of it in pillars and some in huge rocks that looked extremely luxurious. Strange writings, runes, and pictures appeared on the black gold, sometimes glowing and sometimes dimming as they flowed continuously. The group could feel extremely terrifying auras around, which were both powerful and cryptic. A dragon's roar, which was brutal and formidable, could be faintly heard as well. Strange, these writings and runes seem slightly familiar, I seem to have seen them somewhere before. Qin Mu was bewildered. He went next to one of the black gold essence pillar and examined it in detail. The writing was indeed familiar. True Dragon Lord is indeed not here, not here. Dragon-rearing sovereign was already annoyed and was checking on the gold dragon when he suddenly let out a deafening shout, "There's only a dragon nest. Who dug away the true Dragon Lord? The true Dragon Lord has been dug away." Qin Mu was stunned. He looked at the huge underground dragon nest. It was very wide, with black gold essence everywhere. However, from the pillars arrangement, there should have been a huge dragon entrenched there. The center of the dragon nest was empty, presenting a ring-shaped space. Of course, that area was extremely huge, with the circumference of over a dozen miles. The huge dragon's vein didn't seem to have been finished absorbing the dragon chi to become the divine dragon when it got dug out and brought away. The true Dragon Lord had been refined into a dragon jade. Dragon-rearing sovereign walked around the area, his face turning black. He said coldly, "However, that person still miscalculated. He didn't expect for me, dragon-rearing sovereign, to come here, and didn't foresee that he couldn't leave the dragon nest of the true Dragon Lord behind. The person who kept away the dragon's vein of the true Dragon Lord had really refined it into a dragon jade?" Qin Mu cried out in astonishment in his head. "Whoever has that great magic power?" Dragon jade was a kind of jade pendant that portrayed a coiling dragon. The shape was that of a circle, but there was a gap. From the shape of the dragon nest left behind, the dragon's head and tail weren't connected, which was the shape of a dragon jade. However, the material in the dragon nest was black gold essence, while dragon jade was made of jade. On top of that, the biggest a dragon jade could be was the size of a palm. How could a true Dragon Lord that was over a dozen miles long be refined into a dragon jade that was the size of a palm? Qin Mu soon saw why dragon-rearing sovereign said it was a dragon jade. The god peeled off a layer of black gold essence from one of the black gold pillars, revealing the jade inside. Qin Mu raised his head and examined it in detail. The magma around them contained molten black gold essence, and when it washed over the dragon nest, it covered the jade and gave it the color of gold. The dragon nest that dragon-rearing sovereign had mentioned was made solely of fine jade. The dragon's vein of the true dragon nest should have been nurtured to completion, absorbing the dragon chi coming from great ruins and eternal peace empire. However, someone had found it before it had matured and become a true dragon. They refined it into a dragon jade and brought it away. No wonder then that there was such a huge abyss in that place. The person who had taken away the dragon jade had to have found the dragon's vein of the true Dragon Lord and dug through the ground to find the dragon nest. Dragon-rearing sovereign's body trembled, and fire flood dragons instantly peered out from his clothes. As they shook their bodies, they transformed into huge flood dragons and spewed out intense fire in all directions, smelting all the black gold essence around them. Melted gold flowed all over the dragon nest continuously, which made Qin Mu sigh in pity. After the black gold essence flowed away, more jade mountain rocks were revealed. They reflected the light from the magma, and multicolored lights gradually shone from the crystal-like jade whose luster was much gentler than that of crystals. The person who took away the true Dragon Lord must have left the dragon nest to continue absorbing the dragon chi here. When accumulated was large enough, he would come to take the dragon nest and use it to nourish the true Dragon Lord. This way, both the dragon nest and the true Dragon Lord could be protected. Dragon-rearing sovereign laughed continuously and looked at the dragon nest below that was gradually showing its shape. He said arrogantly, "However, it's useless. They didn't expect me to be a step faster than them to take away the dragon nest. They took the true Dragon Lord away to refine it into dragon jade, but I will control the dragon nest to restrain the dragon jade. Once I collect it, I will be able to sense the direction of the dragon jade. Once I find it, the dragon's vein of the true Dragon Lord will become complete." Qin Mu touched his chest, and the jade pendant on his chest became scalding hot, so much so that he felt uncomfortable. There were 2 jade pendants hanging around his neck. One had been passed down from his ancestors, the jade pendant from Carefree Village, and the other was Emperor's Disc, which Cripple had stuffed into his hand some time ago. Emperor's Disc was currently giving off heat, which left Qin Mu somewhat uncomfortable. "Wait a moment." Qin Mu blinked and grabbed his chest. The Emperor's Disc that Cripple had given him seemed to have the shape of a dragon jade. His heart suddenly pounded violently twice. Emperor's Disc was a jade pendant that was carved with numerous cryptic runes, writings, and pictures that were glowing from time to time. Legend said that Emperor's Disc was a treasure gods had conferred to the Ling family, and it represented the authority and role of the emperor. To steal this item, Cripple had even lost his leg to Imperial Preceptor. However, after getting the Emperor's Disc, Cripple had studied it for dozens of years and still couldn't figure anything out, thus he stopped paying any attention to it. Emperor's Disc was useless to him, so he stuffed it into the youth's hands. Qin Mu had planned to return it to him after coming back to the village, but Cripple didn't want to take it back. He had already reattached his leg, so he lacked any interest toward the Emperor's Disc. Since then, that treasure had always been hanging around Qin Mu's neck, tied together with his own pendant. It can't be such a coincidence, right? Beads of cold sweat formed on Qin Mu's forehead. Emperor's Disc indeed had some runes, writings, and pictures which were similar to the runes, writings, and pictures around the dragon nest. They were also glowing and flowing from time to time, making him unable to understand them. However, this Emperor's Disc of mine isn't a dragon jade, it just looks like one. There is no gap. Maybe the writings and pictures on the Emperor's Disc being similar to the ones in the dragon nest are just due to a coincidence. Qin Mu composed his heart, thinking to see how dragon-rearing sovereign would take away the dragon nest. However, the Emperor's Disc around his neck became more and more scalding. So, it became unbearable. Suddenly, Qin Mu felt something moving over his chest, and the heart of the youth couldn't help pounding an extra time. He stretched his hand out to touch it. The Emperor's Disc had split open and become a dragon jade. Not only that, Qin Mu could even feel the dragon jade becoming slimy, as though it had become a living thing. It felt like a small dragon. Thump! 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 Qin Mu heard the violent beating of his heart which couldn't be suppressed. Bigger droplets of sweat formed on his forehead and his legs also became slightly numb as he almost couldn't breathe. Dragon-rearing sovereign took a glance at him and asked when he sensed his nervousness, "What wrong with you, little thing?" Qin Mu composed himself and said, "I just remembered that I haven't fed the dragons today and was afraid of Dragon Sovereign's punishment, that's why I'm feeling uneasy." Dragon-rearing sovereign smiled and said, "So I see. However, this place is too hot and there's magma everywhere. There's no place to stand, so if you want to refine pills to feed the dragons, it'd be best if you went back up. Don't be so scared of me, I'm easy to talk to." Qin Mu acknowledged his words, but his legs were still soft. He said, "In that case, disciple shall go up to refine pills." Dragon-rearing sovereign's body trembled, and instantly, numerous dragons of all sizes flew out from his clothes. He then passed his Daotai sack to the youth and said, "Let your maid follow you to help. Train her well, don't let her be so wild all the time." Qin Mu immediately hurried the dragon Chilean into the air while the group of flood dragons followed behind them to wait for their food. Long Jianan also followed up. When he came to the gate of the cavern, Qin Mu said, "Maid, you shall stay here, I will go over there to refine pills." Long Jianan sneered and said, "Dragon Sovereign made me follow you as he's scared you will run." I will run? Ha ha ha, what a joke." Qin Mu's face was black. Below the cavern, dragon-rearing sovereign started to cast a spell, trying to refine the huge dragon nest to take it away. Strange, it seems like the true dragon lord is quite close to here. There's a reaction from the dragon nest, dragon-rearing sovereign said in astonishment. It seems to not be far away, strange. Let's just take the dragon nest first. Once I'm done with it, I will know where is the true dragon lord. In front of the gate that had the reliefs of 1,000 dragons, numerous flood dragons of all sizes followed closely behind Qin Mu, waiting for him to feed them. Long Jianan was also following behind with her gaze flickering. Time and time again, her gaze would fall on the body of a red flood dragon. That time, among the dragons that dragon-rearing sovereign had let Qin Mu feed, the red flood dragon from Dragon Rider sect was also present. The red flood dragon of the Dragon King was an entity of the cult master level, and it was very familiar with Long Jianan. Even though it was snatched by dragon-rearing sovereign, as long as Long Jianan blew the jade flute, she could still control it. Qin Mu's eyes were still, but his brain was moving at a lightning-fast speed as he thought of ways to escape. If dragon-rearing sovereign took away that huge dragon nest, he and the Emperor's disc might just fly over to squat there obediently upon the nest's activation. How would he then explain the origin of his pendant then? Getting torn apart and eaten by a dragon was an acceptable ending, but what if he didn't die? If he ran away right then, he wouldn't be able to escape all the flood dragons following behind him. Furthermore, Long Jianan was also around, so if he tried to run, he would definitely be killed by that woman. Maid, fetch the herbs to refine pills. Qin Mu threw the Dao Tai sack to Long Jianan, his face flickering between dark and clear. Even though he was slightly farther away from the dragon nest, Emperor's disc around his neck was still squirming as though it was going to come to life. There was an indescribable connection between it and the nest. On top of that, the Emperor's disc became more and more scalding as if it would transform into a dragon to fly back to the nest. Long Jianan held back her anger and opened up the Dao Tai sack to separate the spirit herbs. Qin Mu took out the dragon bead and held it in his hand to absorb its energy. Instantly, a terrifying energy swept through his whole body and flooded his limbs, causing his strength to rise up drastically. No matter what, I will have to leave. Otherwise, after Dragon Rearing Sovereign takes the dragon nest away, I won't have any chance to leave. Qin Mu stretched his hand, and a trail of flowing magma flew up from the river nearby, coming to his side. Since you want me to feed the dragons, I shall feed. Not only shall I feed them, I shall even kidnap them. I can't run away from Dragon Rearing Sovereign by myself, but if I ride on a dragon, who knows? His vital qi transformed into black tortoise vital qi, and the temperature of the magma fell. However, it didn't solidify. Numerous shiny metals dropped down from the trail of magma and clanked on the floor. What had solidified in the magma was the black gold essence. It required a higher temperature to be liquid than magma. Using this method, Qin Mu could extract black gold essence at a quick speed. The purity was also extremely high. Soon, he managed to collect enough black gold essence to forge a golden flute. In the meantime, Long Jianan was still separating the spirit herbs. She had yet to finish. Qin Mu placed the golden flute at his mouth and used secrets of dragon control which was spoken about in dragon rearing scripture. Once he gathered his vital qi to blow the golden flute, a couple of notes left it. It was the first time he cultivated secrets of dragon control, so the melody of the flute was slightly clumsy. However, after testing out the tones for a few times, Qin Mu became more skilled. The flood dragons which had lower cultivations flew to and fro according to the sound of his flute, seeming to be enjoying it. Qin Mu walked forward, and a few more flood dragons moved along with his music. Gradually, he could feel the immense consciousness of the 7 flood dragons connecting with his through the melody of the flute. Boom! His mind exploded, and he felt his consciousness and thoughts linked together with the consciousness of the 7 flood dragons which were as vast as the sea. The corner of Long Jianan's eyes twitched, and she immediately stopped separating the herbs. With her eyes flickering, she took out her jade flute and also began to play it. She tried to fight for the control of those flood dragons. Maid, seeking death. Qin Mu was furious and suddenly let go of the golden flute. He used his vital qi to play a melody with the flute while he himself sent a punch toward Long Jianan. He was completely infuriated. That woman just kept causing trouble for him. If he didn't kill her, it would be hard for him to leave. I've also tolerated you for long enough. Long Jianan couldn't help becoming furious when she heard the word maid. She also let go of her jade flute to let her vital qi blow it. She stretched her hand out to face Qin Mu head-on as well. This woman isn't that dumb. She clearly knows that Dragon Rearing Sovereign gave me an even better dragon bead, yet she still dares to face me head-on. There's definitely something wrong. Qin Mu immediately used the force, and at the instant their 2 palms collided, a red flood dragon came barreling toward Qin Mu. It was none other than the Fire Flood Dragon of Dragon Rider sect. Once Dragon Rearing Sovereign was trying to take the dragon nest, all his attention was placed on it. This caused the control he had on the dragons he raised to weaken, and Long Jianan could instantly connect with the red flood dragon, ordering it to attack. Qin Mu had expected the danger, so he immediately moved backward. A green-colored flood dragon instantly brandished its claws to collide with the red flood dragon. Terrifying waves of air in the dragon's vein blasted out, sending both Qin Mu and Long Jiaonan flying. Qin Mu landed on the scalding magma river. It instantly rumbled, and 2 fire flood dragons rose and carried him over. Long Jiaonan was smacked into a wall by the blast, and the melodious music of her flute immediately controlled another flood dragon. Its fire grew brighter and brighter, blazing in its throat. When it opened its mouth, a beam of surging Li fire shot out, rushing toward Qin Mu like a fire dragon. It was the type of fire which could smelt everything and even vaporize magma. Qin Mu's flute immediately controlled a water flood dragon to pounce on the head of the fire flood dragon. His pet spewed out Khan water which suppressed the Li fire, and the 2 flood dragons instantly tangled each other in a fight. Qin Mu put his fingers together to stab forward, and Carefree sword came out of its sheath to pierce through the layers of flames, going for the heart of Long Jiaonan's brows in a flash. Long Jiaonan was astonished, but she didn't have time to dodge, so she just tilted her head to the side. Carefree sword brushed across her face and stabbed into the dragon scales behind her. So close! Before she could even take in a breath, thousands of sword lights passed through the flames. Right at that moment, the red flood dragon suddenly coiled its body around her to protect her. Countless sword lights clanked against the dragon scales as Qin Mu's flying swords were all blocked by the flood dragon of the cult master level. In the dragon's vein, the flood dragon sunk into a panic, and they all gave off deep dragon roars. The reverberation of it almost exploded Qin Mu and Long Jiaonan's eardrums. Qin Mu's vital qi blew toward the golden flute as he tried to take control of more flood dragons. Long Jiaonan also immediately roused her vital qi to fight with him. The flood dragons were controlled by the sounds of their flutes, and their consciousness was connected with them, making them fight one another. The cultivations of the flood dragons were equivalent to experts that were near god level, and every single one of them was matchless. They used few divine arts and mostly clashed with their corporeal bodies. Only then did Qin Mu see how terrifying were the corporeal bodies of the dragon race. When they moved, thousands of muscles were mobilized, and when their tendons stretched tautly and became loose afterward, they gave off loud bangs which were like thunder from a clear sky. This was a strength that could shift mountains and fill seas, and it was within the body of a dragon. Their explosive force surpassed that of the human race countless times. But it wasn't even all. If the flood dragons executed their divine arts and exploded with their real might, they would be even scarier. However, Qin Mu and Long Jiaonan were both self-aware. The both of them had almost died in the dragon's vein when the 2 flood dragons had spewed fire and water, so it was best to not let them execute their divine arts and just fight with their corporeal bodies. Even though their cultivations were different, with Long Jiaonan being on the 7 stars realm which far surpassed Qin Mu on the 6 directions realm, Qin Mu was no inferior to her in terms vital qi density. The number of flood dragons their flutes could control was 3. Any more than that, and their vital qi wouldn't be enough. Their consciousness also wouldn't be able to handle it. Qin Mu had just begun cultivating secrets of dragon control, but it was one that was complete. Long Jiaonan had cultivated that technique for 30-40 years, but it was from an incomplete copy. Due to that, their power with secrets of dragon control was about identical. However, Long Jiaonan still possessed an advantage. The red flood dragon of the Dragon King was familiar with her, so it was much easier to control. It was also the fiercest in fights, listening to every word of hers. Qin Mu, on the other hand, had just established his connection with the 3 flood dragons, so he couldn't control them as he wished. That bit of difference determined the outcome of their fight. Long Jiaonan controlled the red flood dragon to bite on the neck of a yellow flood dragon, smashing it against the stone wall heavily. The limbs of the red flood dragon touched the floor, and he slithered forward, passing through the other flood dragons that were fighting to pounce straight at Qin Mu. "Rascal, I want to take revenge for everyone in Dragon Rider sect!" Long Jiaonan shouted furiously. Qin Mu's eyes lighted up, and he moved backward quickly. He suddenly transformed into a shadow that stuck to the wall and moved along the wall of the dragon's vein, avoiding the red flood dragon by going over its head. "Sister Long, I'm sorry." His voice came from the wall as he rapidly closed in on her. Astonished, Long Jiaonan saw a huge shadow appear behind her. The dragon Qilin had long been waiting for the moment the red flood dragon would leave her side. When his mouth opened, blazing true fire spewed out. Long Jianan hurriedly turned herself around and grabbed the dragon bead to welcome the Qin fire. When the two touched, the bead burst forth with multicolored lights and blocked the Qin fire. The abilities of the dragon Qin were comparable to an expert of celestial being realm, and his Qin fire was incomparably fierce, charring the hand which Long Jianan used to hold the dragon bead. However, Long Jianan herself was safe and sound. At that moment, the shadow in which Qin Mu had transformed descended from above and materialized as he punched the back of Long Jianan's heart. Boom! Long Jianan was blown away and crashed into the wall of the dragon's vein, all the bones in her body shattering. If there's afterlife, find me for revenge. Qin Mu flicked his finger, and carefree sword stabbed the heart of Long Jianan's brows. She'd been sliding down from the wall, but the sword nailed her still. Swoosh! 8,000 swords arrived altogether and filled the stone wall. Qin Mu's sword finger pointed back, and carefree sword returned back into the sheath. The other swords also returned into his Daotai sack, but Long Jianan could no longer be found on the stone wall. Only a pile of minced meat was left behind. She couldn't shed her skin to rebirth anymore. Qin Mu's vital qi played the sound of the flute, and a fire flood dragon rushed over. Qin Mu leaped on its back and shouted, "Fatty dragon!" The dragon Qin immediately jumped onto the back of the dragon and wagged his tail to fawn at him. Only then did Qin Mu saw him carrying dragon-rearing sovereign's Daotai sack in his mouth. Well done! Qin Mu gave a rare praise which made the dragon Qilin's heart bloom with joy. The sound of the flute became hurried, and the fire flood dragon immediately turned direction, running back the way from which they had come. With the speed of this fire flood dragon, if it continues running at full speed, it can probably run out of great ruins in less than a day and reach eternal peace empire. Qin Mu was excited. But when he turned his head back, his face turned black. Even though the fire flood dragon ran very fast, the other flood dragons followed behind him like shadows. Some were flying, some were running, and some were even swimming. All of them raised their heads to look at him, waiting for him to feed them. "I've only fed you guys once, don't keep following me," Qin Mu pleaded them. "I beg you. You guys are free, go wherever you want to go, don't follow me." The flood dragons of various colors still continued to follow him with their heads raised up to look at him, waiting for him to feed them. "All of your conducts are like those of Fatty Dragon." Qin Mu was speechless from anger. He could only take the Daotai sack of dragon-rearing sovereign and refine pills to feed those bum beetles. Refining pills for the flood dragons was a walk in the park for Qin Mu. The spirit pills that each type of flood dragon ate were different and he had to refine numerous types of them. However, Qin Mu still managed to refine enough spirit pills to feed those bum beetles until they were full. He had thought that the flood dragons would disperse after they were full, but they actually continued to follow him. His intention had been to just control one dragon to get out while letting the others run around. In this way, dragon-rearing sovereign might chase after his brood, which could delay him for a short period of time. However, the flood dragons already recognized Qin Mu as their meal person, so they were reluctant to part with him. He was driven mad but helpless at the same time. Dragon-rearing sovereign only recorded how to subdue dragons and not how to chase them away. Qin Mu blinked and could only submit to his fate. The fire flood dragon under his feet followed the underground dragon vein while sprinting at full speed. It was twice, maybe even 3 times faster when compared to when they were coming there. It couldn't be denied that a dragon was a strong life form even if it was just flood dragon. Their corporeal bodies were much stronger than those of humans, and their endurance was even more astounding. After running for 20–30,000 miles, there was still no decrease in their speed. Dragons are really strong. Of course, other than Fatty Dragon, that glutton is a disgrace to dragons. Qin Mu exclaimed in admiration. Chancellor Ba Shan's green bull also had the bloodline of the green dragon and his endurance was also terrifyingly strong. He had once carried him and Ling Yuxiu out of Roland's golden palace to the capital, and that was truly an astonishing endurance. Qin Mu took another glance at the round dragon Qilin beside him and was absolutely sure that he was a disgrace to dragons. The The dragon Qin would start to pant heavily after running with all his strength for 200-300 miles. Running leisurely for 5,000 miles would completely exhaust him, which would result in him lying down on the ground to snore heavily like a dead pig. According to this speed, I will be able to return to eternal peace in a short while. Qin Mu was full of confidence. If he returned to Eternal Peace Empire, he could either go to the capital to activate Sunshot Divine Cannon or find Blind, Butcher, Village Chief, and the rest. At that time, there would be no need for him to be afraid of Dragon-Rearing Sovereign. At that moment, Dragon-Rearing Sovereign's voice blasted beside his ear. "Little thing, where are you rushing with my kidnapped dragons?" Qin Mu's hair stood up on ends, and his sweat flowed down like a waterfall. He hurriedly turned back to look, but he didn't see Dragon-Rearing Sovereign. "He's transmitting his voice." Goosebumps formed on Qin Mu's body. Good Dragon-Rearing Sovereign had already taken the dragon nest away. How could he take such a huge dragon nest so quickly? Moving such a huge thing isn't difficult for a god, but it is difficult to refine it into becoming so small that it can be put away easily. Qin Mu's scalp crawled. To refine the dragon nest into the size of a jade pendant in a short time required incomparably dense cultivation. To a divine arts practitioner of Six Directions realm like him, this was something that was completely impossible to even imagine. Dragon-Rearing Sovereign was no doubt a god of high heavens. To take away the dragon nest in such a short time required the densest magic power Qin Mu had ever encountered. He must have only taken the dragon nest when he discovered that I ran away with the dragons, so that's why he transmitted his voice. It isn't because he's already behind me, so I still have the possibility to reach eternal peace. Qin Mu composed himself. The speed of the fire flood dragon under his feet had already started to slow down. The beast had already sprinted for 20-30,000 miles, so even if its speed had slightly slowed, it was still extremely astonishing and its endurance could be said to be long-lasting. Qin Mu immediately made a decision, and the sound of his flute changed. He had another flood dragon come close and jumped on it. The dragon Qin also jumped over on the other dragon's back. The golden dragon immediately exerted its strength to sprint faster, and their speed was boosted once again. He, little thing. Dragon-Rearing Sovereign's voice continued to travel over. He was using magic power to have his words reach an extremely far-off place. Qin Mu had once seen this kind of great divine art used by Chancellor Ba Shan. However, Chancellor Ba Shan had transmitted his voice from 1,000 miles away, while Dragon-Rearing Sovereign could probably transmit it even farther than 20-30,000 miles. Qin Mu could feel his voice coming over at an extremely fast speed. It was obvious that Dragon-Rearing Sovereign was transmitting it while running. Between his sentences, he had already gotten 1,000 miles closer. "I don't blame you for kidnapping my dragons, so I'll still treat you well and continue to let you be my dragon-raising boy. You should know that I admire you very much, that's why I like your talent. Wait a minute. Weird." Dragon-Rearing Sovereign's voice had a hint of astonishment as he cried out, "I can sense through the dragon nest the true Dragon Lord moving rapidly." The Emperor's disc on Qin Mu's chest became warm, and the dragon jade started to stretch out and squirm continuously. It seemed to be able to sense the dragon nest as well. He, little thing. The true Dragon Lord is running in the same direction as you, so no wonder you would run away. The true Dragon Lord is on your body. His voice was both delighted and furious. So the true Dragon Lord was always right under my nose. How daring of you, to bounce around under my nose for so long. If you were able to escape, wouldn't my reputation as Dragon-Rearing Sovereign be ruined by you? Where was I bouncing around? I was clearly very honestly by your side, Qin Mu said resentfully. This video will end here.